Let us continue Be'ezus Hashem Yisburach with the gewaldige halachas of Havdala. We started yesterday the inyan of finishing Shabbos, not rushing out of Shabbos Kodesh, which is such a gewaldige inyan. I hope Be'ez Hashem this week we're going to do that. We're going to be Mekayim that. We're going to show the Rabbeinu Shalom that we love Shabbos. We want Shabbos to stay with us, and the Meilah we're not running out. What time is Mariv? Right? Okay. So Be'ez Hashem, let's see if we get any of those questions today, this Shabbos. Al Kaponim, we started the inyan of Havdala. Very important sugya to understand how to make Havdala, when to make Havdala, who to make Havdala, and some of the small inyanim. We're not going to go through all of the details. I just want to tell the Olam now, disclaimer, it's not shaykh to go in these shurim to every small detail of Havdala. What's that? We're not going to go through all the details, because we have to get to more and more halachas, Be'ez Hashem. But let's continue. So like this, Rabbi Sai, who is chayiv in Havdala? So generally speaking, like every other mitzvah, a male over 13 years old has a chiyuv to either make or obviously listen to Havdala in that case. And of course, once a child reaches the age of chinuch, we have an obligation as a parent to be mechanech our children in the mitzvah of Havdala. By the way, the inyan of chinuch, when it comes to Shabbos, could be slightly different to other mitzvahs as well. The Magen Avraham, famously the Magen Avraham in Shemem Gimel, when he talks about the inyan of how to mechanech children, and Sfiyah B'yadayim, feeding children things that they shouldn't be doing, whatever it is. So that halacha will depend on the age of the child, also the mitzvah that we're dealing with, for the understanding that they need to have for that particular mitzvah. So when it comes to Shabbos, they have to have some more of an understanding of what Shabbos is, that the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th, and there has to be some kind of understanding, and at that point they reach chinuch. Once they reach chinuch, we have a chiyuv to mechanech our children, making sure that they hear Havdala. When it comes to women, are women chayiv in Havdala? According to most Rishonim, the mitzvah of Havdala, as we mentioned yesterday, is a da'oraisa. It comes from the Torah, and just like Kiddush, we know that women, we have a hekesh, right? And they have a chiyuv just to be shomer Shabbos, right? They have a chiyuv to keep Shabbos, they also have a chiyuv to be zocha shomer Shabbos and kadshoy. Maybe they have a chiyuv to make Kiddush, and according to that, they are chayiv as well to hear Havdala, as I paskin the Maggid Mishnah b'shem the Rambam, the Rav Yodan, Muki Yosef, the Chinuch Avudram, Reb Kivega, the Yavit, Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Aruch HaShulchan. Women are avada chayiv in Havdala, that's for sure. Even though it's a mitzvah say shazman grama, it is a time-bound mitzvah that generally speaking women are potter from a time-bound mitzvah. Mitzvah says shazman grama, but over here we have a special hekesh by Shabbos Kodesh that just because they have to keep Shabbos, they also have to remember the beginning and the end of Shabbos Kodesh in that case over there. There is an Aruch HaSchaim put down in the Beis Yosef and Simon Reish Tzadivov that wants to be mekel and says that they are potter. Obala halacha lemaisa. The Shulchan Aruch paskins very simply that women are avada chayiv, just like the chayiv in Kiddush. They're also chayiv in Havdala in that case. What happens if a woman cannot hear it from a man, which is obviously the most achatchila, and the most normal is that a woman, Ephraim, hears it from her husband, her father, whoever it may be in the situation that we're dealing with in that case. By the way, Mishnah Berurah points this out, there is no issa for a woman to make Havdala by herself. There is no problem whatsoever, even though people refrain from doing so. But Al Kaponim, there is no issa if she's stuck with no one, then of course she can make it by herself. About making Havdala or listening to Havdala on the phone, so I called out Reb Simcha Bunim Cohen from Lakewood, because I know that he grew up in the same building as Reb Moshe when he grew up, and now he lives in Lakewood, but originally he was in Brooklyn, and he grew up in the same building as Reb Moshe. I used to call him all the time to ask him different shilas about Reb Moshe, what he remembered, whatever. Unbelievable Yid, unbelievable Talmid Chacham, a big posek. Anyway, Bekitza, so he told me that he heard from Reb Moshe that Reb Moshe said, Avada not lechatchila, to be soymech and listen from Havdala from a phone, but b'shas atchak, if there's no other eitzah, so Reb Moshe, he told him that b'shas atchak, she can hear Havdala from a phone. Now, lemaisa, another halacha, doing malacha before Havdala. So the Shulchan Aruch says very clearly, Reish Tzadi Tes, that anything that's osa to do on Shabbos is osa until you do Havdala. Now, Havdala doesn't only mean al hakois, it also means al hakois, but it means until you've said Baruch HaMavdal. That means until a Yid, and by the way, this is negay to you, it's negay also to women when you get married, because women are not always going to Mariv, and therefore they're not always, saying Baruch HaMavdal Atachon Tonu in Shmoneh Esrei, so they need to know this, that you cannot do any malacha on Motzei Shabbos. There's no automatic, when Shabbos goes out on the Zmanim, on the chart, on the Luach, okay, Shabbos is out, I can do whatever I want now. There needs to be a Havdalah. There needs to be something. It's the Issa of Malacha continues until you do Havdalah. So whether you say Atachon Tonu Shmoneh Esrei, whether you have Havdalah ala Kois, or if you say Baruch HaMavdal Ben Kodesh L'Chol, that's good enough. But it needs to be said. And that's an important thing for a person to be realizing. It is a very, very important thing that a person has to say in that case over there. Let us move on, Rabbi Yisrael. As I said, there's a lot to discuss over here. I have to decide what we are going to say, what we're not going to say over there. By the way, there's a Zohar Kodesh. For those of you that follow the Zohar Kodesh, or are makpid to be following the Zohar Kodesh, the Zohar Kodesh brings down, it's also brought, by the way, in the Mishnah Berurah. The Chofetz Chaim also felt to bring the Zohar Kodesh in the Mishnah Berurah, that a Bal Nefesh should not do any malacha, until he says Ata Kodesh. Until he says Ata Kodesh in Mariv, the end after Shmoneh Esrei, the Zohar Kodesh brought down in the Mishnah Berurah, we should not do any malacha until that stage over there. The Lashon of the Heilige Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Baal HaTanya, is, he says, if a person does malacha before saying Ata Kodesh of the Kedusha, right, he says, Eina roya simen bracha la'oila ma'oisa malacha. As though is the Lashon of the Heilige Shulchan Aruch Harav in the Heilige Baal HaTanya, to be careful not to do any malacha until that case over there. Eating, Rabbi Yisai. By the way, a famous Maisa, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, when Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Zatzal used to go into a taxi, so he was always worried that the taxi driver here in Eretz Yisrael, not necessarily did he make Havdalah, and not necessarily did he hear Havdalah ala Kois, not necessarily did he have Mariv and he said Atachon and Tonu, not necessarily did he say Baruch HaMavdal Ben Kodesh L'Chol. He's going to get in a taxi driver is doing malacha, he's not allowed to do malacha. So Rabbi Shlomo Zalman used to say, Badavka, before he even got into the car and the guy started driving off, would say to him, Shavua Tov. And the guy would hopefully reply, Shavua Tov, and he held that was some kind of Havdalah, less B'shas Atchak, less Breira. You can't tell him to say anything. Obviously, if you can, you should. But if you cannot, then that's an important thing over there. Rabbi Yisai, eating before Havdalah. Also a very important halacha. This is very negeya. Whether you eat shalashidus or not is not really much of a discussion, because we already discussed over here how important it is for a person to eat shalashidus, and of course what it saves a person from avada. But like any mitzvah, Shulchan Aruch in the beginning of Reish Study Test tells us how important it is. Like any other mitzvah comes along, like for example we know by Shachris, we know it by Mincha in Simon Peites, there's a halacha that you cannot eat. That's a halacha by many, many mitzvahs that we find. When the Zman of Havdalah arrives, which is Motzei Shabbos, by Nacht, it is oseh to eat over care. The Arizal says even water. A person cannot even have a glass of water when the Zman of Mariv has arrived, when the Zman of Nacht has arrived, because the Zman of Havdalah is here. Once the Zman of Havdalah is here, a person cannot eat, and according to the Arizal, a person should be careful even from water. The poskim bring down, it does not start from Nacht, it starts from Shkia already. It starts from Shkia. Why that cheshbon is so we're not going into, but it starts from Shkia. That means Lemaisa. If a person is not, if you're eating shalashidas, it's in the middle of shalashidas. You started shalashidas before, you can continue for days and days and days. There's no problem. Continue shalashidas, kedusha of Shabbos continues. It's moyeding. Lemaisa, if you did not eat shalashidas for whatever reason, like chas v'shalom, I'm sure we don't know such people. We don't know of such situations. The olim are like, what? Who doesn't eat shalashidas? But if a guy didn't manage to wash shalashidas, shkia comes along, he's not allowed to eat anymore. He's not allowed to eat because this is the Zman of Havdalah. Until he hears Havdalah, he's not allowed to eat over there. And that's why a person has to be very, very careful. In that case, there's even halachos, which we're not going to go into, that the Mishnah Berurah discusses, that if you started eating, you have to stop eating in that case. I'm not now going into the sugya now, by the way, in case you're wondering what exactly, when is a last person allowed to wash shalashidas, can wash after shkia, not wash after shkia, I don't know, I'm not going into it, that's not our sugya right now, but let's talk about a basic shaila. When shkia comes along, Rabbi Yisai, if you're not in the middle of shalashidas, you cannot eat because it's this man already, a shtickle of Havdalah, of Mariv, of Nacht, and therefore a person has to be careful to make sure that he does not eat. Benching on wine, by the way, there are many people that make Birchas Hamazon, benching with a zimun, whatever, or wine, or grape juice, whatever. So obviously you can't drink that wine, because it's after benching already. Once after benching, obviously you can't eat anymore. That's another poshet ad mu'oid in that case. Let's move on, Rabbi Isai, because I want to try to get to many of the different halachas that we have to get through, and that is like this. Chazal tell us, by the way, it's a Gemara in Pesachim Kufir Gimel, that there are 3 people that get Olam Haba. 3 people that get Olam Haba. One of them live in Eretz Yisrael. All of you, Gavaldik. The other one, if you raise your children in Torah, all of you, Baruch Hashem. And the other one is your Mavdil Alayayin, all of you. Gavaldik. Rabbi, we have all 3 reasons that we're going to be Mekayim, that we are being Mavdil on Yayin, and there Prikud Rebelezer brings it down as well, by the way. Anyway, the point is, Havdala should be made with Shabbos clothing on, with a tablecloth. The Mishnah Berurah says the tablecloth should be on, Bishas Maisa of the Havdula. Minhagim of standing or sitting during Havdala, I don't want to go too much into, because when it comes to Minhagim, everyone should keep their minig that they come from. But the Shittas of Shulchan Aruch is that when you're being moitzi other people, Shulchan Aruch says you should actually sit down and only stand when you're making it for yourself. The Shittas Ramah is, B'Shem Tosus in Brachas Daf Mem Gimel, is that a person should stand even when he is, yes or not, being moitzi other people in that case. One of the reasons, by the way, that the poskim say a person should stand during Havdalah is to be mavdil, is we are partially, because obviously Malava Malka is the other part, is we are escorting the Shabbos Malka out. That's royalty. Royalty, nobody just sits, you have to stand, else to cover the Malchus. Mimela, if that's the case, that's the reason why many people do have a minig. Again, there are different minhagim, Ashkenaz, Sfard, Chassidim, Litvaks. I'm not going now into different minhagim, everybody keeps their own minig. Let's move on to Rabbi Isai. The kois of Havdula, kois shel yain, has to have the same halachas we discussed by Kiddush, which we already discussed. The kois shel bracha requires all of the things that a kois shel Kiddush requires in that case. It should be clean, it should be rinsed out, whatever it is, it shouldn't be pogrom, it shouldn't be cracked, whatever it may be. Overflowing wine. We know that there's a minig by Havdula Dafka, or maybe only, to overspill the wine when it comes to Havdula. So this is the Ramah in the beginning of Reish Tzadivov. It's kedai to look it up, the Lashon. The Ramah says that a house that wine is not poured like water lacks siman bracha. Right? So Gemara in Erevin Daf Ayin Hey Amud Aleph talks about it also in that case. By the way, the Maharsha, when he explains the Gemara, he says it's not the pshat that a person should dafka like spill it over. Pshat is, says the Maharsha, is you shouldn't be makpid to be careful that it doesn't spill. That's what the Maharsha explains pshat. Doesn't mean I bedafka have to do it in that case. Right? That's what it is. And as I pass in the Mishnah Berurah, in order to start the week with siman bracha, we overflow the kois, but obviously not too much, because that's tam a hefsed oichlin, that a person shouldn't do that. Anyone that's familiar with the writings of the Arizal, the Arizal is quite makpid not to do this. In fact, he writes, it's a bezoyan to the mashka that you're spilling out, and mashbiach I'm praising the people that don't spill out the wine, and even the Mati Yehuda talks about it also, many different minhagim about these things, but again, what the idea is we want to make sure that the bracha is spilling in the beginning of the week, in that case over there. The Seder is you lift up the cup, it's held in the right hand, and the Besamim is in the left hand over there. After that Birchas HaGofen, you transfer the cup to the left hand, and now you hold the Besamim in the right hand. Obviously we're assuming a person is right-handed. If you're left-handed, then it's the opposite way around, and you now make the bracha on the Besamim in that case. Drinking the wine, again, same thing by Kiddush, a molei lugmov, right? Cheekful, rov revius. It's got to be drunk, and also no speaking. I think the Olim are makbid, Baruch Hashem, that the Olim don't speak until the one that's making Havdula, right, Shimon, drinks a molei lugmov. And if he drinks a molei lugmov, now the Olam can speak in that case. Only one person needs to drink it, right? But it's important, by the way. When Moshe brings this down in Tshuva, you can look this up in Igros Moshe Chelek Dalet Siman Ois Aleph, where he says that a person should be makbid, if you're listening to Havdalah, not to speak. Is that the right time? Oh wow, Gavaldik Shkoyach. Thank you very, very much. Moving on, Rabbi Chama Medina, we already spoke about in that case. Chama Medina, whether or not a person can or cannot use Chama Medina, we already spoke about that last time in that area over there. By the way, when it comes to Besamim, that's also an interesting one as well, because sometimes a person won't have Havdalah, he won't have Havdalah for whatever reason, and whether or not he should make a mocham b'samim, the answer is yes. That even if you're not making a actual Havdalah for whatever reason, there's a mitzvah to actually smell the b'samim, and of course the reason of smelling the b'samim is to replace somewhat the neshamim yisera that has left us on Motzei Shabbos. By the way, many people I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've heard this from many people, and it could be Milsa Dolay Rama de Inish Lavadai to the Gemara in Chulin, that we never chapped it because we never realized it, as I stated in the Gemara in 3 places, that Motzei Shabbos, many people feel like a very schwachkeit. I know people, one person told me he always argues with his wife on Motzei Shabbos. So he says to me, always Motzei Shabbos we have an argument. I don't know why. Another guy said to me, he's a Boki B'Shas, Mamish, unbelievable Boki B'Shas. He says to me, Motzei Shabbos is the hardest time for him to learn. This is a yid that's mamish, oisik, but unbelievable. Motzei Shabbos is so hard. Doilim can relate to these things, right? It's hard, Taka. Al Kaponim, we have to realize it's a real thing. Our Neshama Yisera has left us. There's a piece that's left us. People feel the void. The besomim, we smell it, we get something back. By the way, Mishabur says the minig oilim is to use something set aside for besomim, like dried cloves, for example, or dried orange peel. But there are other things that are brought down in the poskin that you can use. For example, an esrog. Shulchan Aruch Harav in the Graz says that you could use an esrog in that case, but you should make the bracha noisen reach toy beperis. Using perfume and things like that, Rav Moshe talks about it, and he says that you should not use perfume. Hadas leaves are very common, right? Many people have a minig, it's pulled down in Shulchan Aruch and Ramah, the minig of using the hadassim that you used for your lulav. And the reason for that is because once it was done with one mitzvah, then you want to do another mitzvah with it over there. Be'ezus Hashem. And of course, the nair as well that we do in Havdala. Let's try to finish off the halachas. The mitzvah, one of the mitzvahs of Havdala, it's a separate mitzvah. That means every bracha that we're making or we're listening to by Havdala is a separate mitzvah. We're getting a mitzvah for Havdala, we're getting a mitzvah for the sun, we're getting a mitzvah for the nair. It's like a volume of mitzvahs going on by Havdala. Right? Shulchan Aruch tells us that one of the mitzvahs is a separate mitzvah, and that is to make a bracha on the nair. Of course, because the Rabbanim Shalom created fire, as we know, before Shabbos, right? It was only produced on Motzei Shabbos when the Rabbanim Shalom gave Adam Arishan the idea to rub the stones together, ki yadua, and therefore, that's why on Motzei Shabbos we dafka do that. And there's a machlokes was showing him what exactly is the birchas hashvach, or is it not birchas hanenin. I don't want to go too much into that inyan, but the idea Rabbi say is when we're making Havdalah, when we're listening to Havdalah, we're being mavdil. There's a certain das that a person needs, that every human being understands. There's a difference between kodesh and chol, and we should try as much as we can to be moisef chol al kodesh. Next week, Be'ez Hashem, brand new topic.